I keep invoking Mayor Pete. The reason I invoke Mayor Pete is because this is the hard push that he has been making now for weeks and months, and the media have picked up on it and amplified it. So here is Buttigieg yesterday suggesting that God has no political party.
As you know, it can be challenging to be a person of faith who's also a part of the LGBTQ community. And yet, to me, the core of faith is regard for one another. And part of how God's love is experienced, according to my faith tradition, is in the way that we support one another, and in particular, support the least among us. One of the things about Scripture is different people see different things in it. But at the very least, we should be able to establish that God does not have a political party.
Okay, there are a couple of things there that are very much worthy of note and go to this underlying conflict over religious philosophy. Number one, Mayor Pete's version of religion is the same as Barack Obama's version of religion or Hillary Clinton's version of religion. They're going to quote one verse from Matthew about the least among us, and then they're going to ignore the rest of the entire Bible. That is going to be their thing. We have to treat people, also, they're going to conflate treating people with respect or tolerance with treating their sin with respect or tolerance. So therefore, if you see somebody in front of you who you believe is committing a sin, even if you treat them nicely, but you don't accept that their sin is decent, then this means that you are not respectful or tolerant. That, of course, is untrue. I, as a religious Jew, I've said this before, you can watch me on Dave Rubin's show. As a religious Jew, I believe homosexual activity is a sin. I have many, many, many gay friends. The reason that that is relevant is because I treat gay people very well, just the way I would treat everybody else, because it turns out that lots of people that I know sin in a variety of ways of which I do not approve. I still treat them really well. That does not mean that I have to think that their sins are no longer sins, just as they don't have to take seriously my religious point of view. Differences of opinion are fine so long as we treat each other with a certain modicum of respect. Now, that modicum of respect does not mean I have to violate my religion. It doesn't mean I have to attend a gay wedding. It doesn't mean that I have to cater my services to a same-sex wedding. It doesn't mean that I have to bake a cake for a gender transition ceremony. I don't have to do any of those things. That is not a demand of respect. That's a demand of service. A demand of service is not the same as a demand of respect. Respect just means I have to treat you just as I would any other human being when I deal with you interpersonally. It does not mean that I have to leverage my behavior or my activities on behalf of your specific sin, which is why I have said to my friend Dave Rubin, I'm more than happy to go out to dinner with you and your husband. I am not willing to go to your gay wedding, because one is the celebration of something that I religiously consider sinful, and the other is just me going out with my friends. And if they commit a sin, that's on them. I mean, that's not really my responsibility. These distinctions matter because what's the underlying drive here is to paint all religious people as bigots, as intolerant. So if I don't do what you want me to do, I'm a bigot and I'm mean and I'm intolerant. Now, I have a right to think what I want about a behavior in which you engage. And you have a right to think that my religion is stupid. You have a right to think whatever you want. And if you want to have a diverse worldview, if you want to have a diverse society, you're going to need to accept that other people may not think of sin in the same way that you think of sin. And so long as we all treat each other decently when we interact with one another, without necessarily green-lighting each other's sins or each other's philosophies, then we can have a perfectly nice society. If not, things are going to get really ugly really quickly. The second half of Mayor Pete's statement there, where he suggests that God has no political party, as I say, that is half true and it's 100% disingenuous. So it is half true because, yes, God did not say you must vote Democrat or you must vote Republican. God says that you have free will. You can choose whichever. Nor does God give statements about the party platforms of the two parties. But if you're a Bible believer, and again, this entire conversation is in the context of defining Bible believing. It's in the context of defining Judeo-Christian. So if you don't believe in the Bible, if you don't believe in Judeo-Christian values, this conversation is not for you. And as I say, this is not an argument that every voting decision must be predicated on your belief in Judeo-Christian values. You can just say, I don't vote along the lines of my religion. That's fine. You can say, I don't vote along the lines of Judeo-Christian values. That's fine too. It's a free country. The point that I'm making is that if you're like Mayor Pete and you're going to invoke Judeo-Christian values and the biblical God in order to back your position, as Mayor Pete does on a routine basis, it's a package deal. You don't get to pick and choose. When I say that Mayor Pete leverages his religion on behalf of his politics on a routine basis, I mean it. So, for example, Pete Buttigieg said just the other day that he is faithful because he is humble, whereas President Trump is not. He said this in the same interview on CNN.
Part of where I'm coming from is a faith tradition that counsels me to be as humble as possible, that counsels me to look after those who need defending. And frankly, it couldn't be more radically different than what I see certainly in this White House, where there's a lot of chest thumping and self-aggrandizing. not to mention abusive behavior.
So President Trump obviously does not believe in God, whereas Pete Buttigieg believes in God. That's according to Pete Buttigieg. He's the one making the religious arguments right now. So since Buttigieg is going to make religious arguments, I'm going to make religious counter arguments. When he says that he is humble, there's nothing less humble than I can imagine, as a religious person, than going in and willy-nilly rewriting 3,000 years of biblical history. That seems pretty non-humble to me. And as you'll see, Pete Buttigieg does this on a routine basis. So I'm not a big believer that Donald Trump is a religious man in any traditional sense. I don't think that he believes in traditional definitions of sin either, or if he does, I don't think that he abides by them. He's a sinner in the way that everybody else is a sinner, maybe more so. But for Buttigieg to stand there and say, I am a humble servant, whereas Donald Trump is an arrogant man. Okay, he may be more humble than Trump. In some ways, he is not more humble in the sense that Donald Trump is not the one coming forward and saying, oh yeah, these millions of believers who have believed this stuff for the last 3,000 years, and it's written in the text. I'm just going to override all of that because that's how I feel about things. That seems pretty arrogant to me.